Welcome to SportsLit. I'm Neil Acharya.
And I am Nathan Sager.
Today we are pleased to be joined by André Lachance and Jean François Ménard about team chemistry, 30 elements for coaches to foster cohesion, strengthen communication skills, and create a healthy sport culture. It was released on April 19th through publisher ECW Press. Need some life coaching? Well, even if you don't want it, you'll get it. Just go to your Instagram account, and the world is full of experts on how you can get the most out of you. I don't even need to scroll to find an example. The 11th tile on my feed says, Bill Gates, 9 rules you will never learn in school. 1, life is not fair. Get used to it. Stop expecting life to hand you think you deserve. That's not my mistake. That's how it's typed out. Number 2, the world doesn't care about your self-esteem. Start making something of yourself today, right now, and so it goes. Pop back out, and now the algorithm thinks I crave this stuff. First tile, 12 habits you don't realize are killing you slowly. Now, not all of these are filled with nonsense. Many are, but not all. These are faceless accounts, but you can find loads of influencers who will tell you as much in short videos. The thread with most of them is that they are supposedly self-made successes. No school needed, just hustle. A common theme seems to be you need to unlearn, or what you were taught was garbage. Before I go down that path, there's a reason I'm bringing all of this up. Today we have André Lachance and Jean François Ménard on the show. André is a professor in the School of Human Kinetics at the University of Ottawa, and he was the manager of the Canadian women's baseball team from 2004 to 2018. He then coached Team France to a European championship. He got to know Jean François, JF for short, when he was a student in some of his coaching classes at the University of Ottawa back in 2002. This was the time when André was creating the aforementioned National Women's Baseball program. Today, JF is a mental performance expert who specializes in performance psychology. He's worked with Canadian Olympians like moguls King Mikhail Kingsbury, Super Bowl champion Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, and both have experience with the world-renowned performers of Cirque du Soleil. So, what does a pro make of this world with so many amateur experts? It's certainly one of the questions I aim to uncover today. Let's peer behind the curtain a little to understand the mental aspect of coaching and mental coaching in general. Before we welcome our two guests, Nate Sager, what's on your mind after reading this book?
Well, Neil, it could probably just be boiled down to that aphorism. We've all heard it, right? Championships are won in the room. Like, not many teams have gotten to the top of something if they didn't get along. I mean, yes, there's a few examples that are throughout history. The Bronx Zoo, New York Yankees of the late 70s, the Shaq and Kobe Lakers of the early 2000s that Jeff Pearlman wrote about in his book, 3 Ring Circus, that we profiled. Mm-hmm. But usually, if you get a bad fit, it can all go horribly asunder. Neil, I'm actually, when we were thinking about this, I was reminded of a person from your pandemic project, the long-form piece you wrote about the late hockey player, Brian Fogarty, who played junior hockey in Kingston when we were kids, a fellow named Jacques Tremblay. Here was a smart, high-energy guy. I mean, he was still coaching junior hockey when he was in his 80s. But someone who knew him, I remember them saying, he probably wrote more books about hockey than some hockey people have read. When he came to Kingston to coach that team, and you and I at the time were following it as 10, 11-year-old kids, it was an utter disaster. He ended up not even lasting the season, and that team set a league record for consecutive losses that still stands almost 35 years later.
Yeah, that came after an 8-20 start. And, also on that note, let's not forget another academic who was kind of ushered out the door with Fogarty's coach in Quebec, Dave Chambers, who was on the faculty at the university or at York University.
Yeah, yeah. If people don't buy into what you're selling, it's not going to work. But yeah, Kingston, that always stuck with me. That team was so bad that it got sold and renamed, and then had to be sold and renamed again. But after that, everything went so well for them. No,
Real hockey was not back in town.
yeah, and just a minor, the Kingston connection a little bit, because that's our jam. Recall when we had Doug Smith on to talk about his book on the Toronto Raptors,
Season 4, Episode 7.
right? And I sort of tied that to personal relationship with basketball, early exposure to the Smart family, the roots of the Carleton Ravens Canadian University basketball dynasty. Once I did ask Dave Smart, what's an X factor for Carleton, that because people will just always point to the talent, they'll point to the coaching, and Dave's answer was, well, we've always had people who understood the progression from being followers to becoming secondary leaders to becoming primary leaders. Dave Smart is an expert in mental skills. Like an NHL team used to bring him in as a consultant to do that, and he and his staff could always identify people who had the skills to play, but also just, I guess, really just the self-awareness to fit into that group dynamic. And of course, that's the Canadian analog of, I guess, mid-major D1 college basketball, not the NBA with the salaries and the agents and the egos and the obligations. But that's an environment where a star has to also be a leader. They can't just be a stat compiler who's on their own program, right? And I guess that's what's all these at the upper echelons of sport these days and companies. Group chemistry is now a billions of dollars industry, you'd have to think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was probably it was probably like the core subject of what I think was one of the one or two most insightful sports movies of the last 6-7 years. Richard Linklater's Everybody Wants Some.
I've heard about that film. You speak highly of it.
Yeah, which I've seen it, and I keep telling people you got to go watch it. And that's a movie it's a sports movie, but you never see the team actually playing a game against an actual opponent. It's a movie that follows these college baseball bros having a bonding weekend on the first weekend of school, and you sort of see everyone settling into their roles. Everyone plays nice at first, and then on day two, as the Glenn Powell character puts it, their true a-hole nature comes out. And Linklater, this is a movie that shows like sort of young, alpha male type guys who actually do have some depth to them and care about each other, which is healthy and what probably what a lot of young males of that age are lacking these days. But it's also at the same time smart enough that he made an anti-toxic masculinity movie at the same time. And I don't want to get too far down that ranty rabbit hole, but I always thought it was something unique that he, put that out a movie, which he said in 1980, just before the U.S. election that year, and he released it just months before the 2016 election. And we know, and both times, as the electorate and the culture chose to indulge a certain type of, male fragility, and we've seen the results. But bringing this back on point, André Lachance and Jean François Ménard, they talk a lot in this about how to teach concepts to athletes. And I always just think of like how much sports has changed over the years. Like you used to think of that stereotype in football, Neil, where the coach brings out this 300-page binder and just here, learn all the plays. And now, that was going out long before, the digital technology evolved. Now you see teams now like I'm a fan of the Minnesota Vikings, and they've got a setup, and they borrowed this from the Los Angeles Rams, the Super Bowl champs, where there's a video board like right on the practice field, and they can go back and watch like right after a drill and correct and praise football playbooks. And this idea, here's a bunch of squiggly lines on a page, that started fading out before 4K. I definitely, if people want to know how that all went down, check out a book by S.C. Gwynn called The Perfect Pass, American Genius and the Reinvention of Football. It all goes into Hal Mumme and Mike Leach, coaching small colleges and just realizing, hey, you can pass the ball 60 times a game if you practice how to pass the ball 60 times a game, and you have to make your drills so the players get more and more reps throwing and catching footballs and running routes. And that became, stuff they did at a little college in Iowa. That became foundational in making the NFL all about quarterbacks and wide receivers and not having, this, like I say, 300-page playbook. I mean, Vince Lombardi was the same, even if he didn't have the same objectives, right? You keep the playbook lean, and the players, as he used to put it, find freedom within that discipline, and they know when to riff. And as to borrow that line from Winning Time, you put the music in the players' hands. And I mean, that's why I was really enjoyed what JF and Andre had to say, because they were showing, okay, here's how you build the culture of a group, but to get it to the point where, people feel like, they can bring ideas forward. One of the reasons that a podcast they never miss on a weekly basis is the Office Ladies. Isn't just because I love the show. It's the joy which the two hosts, the two actresses, Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey, just described the collaborative learning environment that their showrunner Greg Daniels created. He was a best idea wins guy. And if comedy, that's why he has showrunner trees, because it's not just, okay, you're doing this job. If you have a good idea, let's try it. But how does a group get to where people are going to feel bold enough to not only row but steer, right? I mean that starts usually at the top, and how the course is charted by a coach. And I think André Lachance and Jean François Ménard have done a good job showing how a coach at any level can try to create that environment.
Thanks, Nate. Before we are joined by the both of them, I'd like to let you know that you can purchase this book and any others on our website at sportslit.ca. You can find all of our episodes there as well. We are on social media, of course, on Twitter at SportsLitPod, as well as Instagram. And feel free to message, share, or comment. We'll be right back with our guests. And we're back. Another episode of Sports Lit. Nate, it's going to be a fun day today, isn't it?
It is. It's always a fun day when we do this.
Well, the first thing I want to do, I want to ask Jean François and Andre, how are you both feeling out of 100?
Well, I've got to say that I'm about a 95. I'm having a good day.
And same for me. It's a long weekend. Like you got to be over 90 for sure.
So Jean François and Andre, you can both answer this, or one of you can. Why is it a good strategy for a coach or somebody to ask how are you doing out of 100, and just instead of just asking how you're doing?
So one of the reasons this is really important, guys, is because, when we haven't seen someone in a little while, what's the typical question we'll ask? How are you doing? Right. And then the person will just say, I'm doing well. How are you? And you'll answer, I'm doing great, or I'm doing well, or whatever. But how much information do you really get out of that? Not much. And when you talk about a relationship between a coach and an athlete, I think what's the most important thing is to get the most important or the most information as possible about the current state of the person. And that's how you really coach someone. So this question you just asked is one of our chapters where we explain, like, by asking someone what their rating on 100 is, then the person has to pick a number. So one, they got to think about their current state. And two, and most importantly, is to ask them to elaborate on why they give themselves that rating. So you might get into a meeting or start coaching an athlete, and you might think they're doing well. They might tell you, oh, I'm a 92. And they might tell you they're a 60. And it might catch you by surprise a little bit. And then whatever that athlete's going to give you in terms of information should have a huge impact on the way you're going to coach them. And so sometimes I find we don't assess the situation enough. And it's just a tool, an easy strategy to get additional information to influence the way you're going to coach.
Thank you, Jean François. Andre, is there anything to add on that? And I'll follow up with a question.
At the end of the day, knowing well the athletes on the team that you coach is so important. And I think most coaches fail as getting as much information as possible so you can adapt your interventions, your leadership style, the way you're going to teach / coach the athletes on the team. So starting conversation with questions, and the people who are going to buy the book, you'll see that we kind of ask lots of questions as the authors that we are, and the same thing as we coach. Also, we ask lots of questions, and I think coaches are not good enough at asking good questions, and that one is a very good question to start a good conversation.
So how did Jean François, was it you? How did you arrive at this? Was this somewhere? Did you borrow this from someone, or is it something that you thought of one day and just ran with it?
I've got to take credit. I'm pretty sure I invented that one. I've never seen someone else use it the way I use it. And the reason is, guys, is my reality is some of these athletes I coach, I don't see them every day. Sometimes I won't see them for a week, or I won't speak to them for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And there's a ton of stuff that goes on during our last meeting and our current meeting. And it's important for me to probe, to assess, to get additional information and what happened during that time, because my job is to coach them on their current needs, not coach them on where they were 2 weeks ago, coaching them where they are now. And so I just noticed that the way I would start interventions or coaching sessions with athletes, sometimes I didn't get enough information. And I just kind of came up with this little strategy that it's been working so well that I still use it today. It's been about 10 years now that I use it. So
the basis for this book, and it's described very animatedly, is the periodic table of elements relating to sports chemistry. Could you explain, maybe Andre, how that came to be, how that works? So please.
Sure. And I like to give credit to a very boring Mexican speaker at the conference in Cuba to give me the idea to share with JF. But that started like that. Like, basically, I'm in a conference room and I'm attending a very boring presentation, and I start thinking about things, and JF and I have been thinking about writing a book, and then suddenly, for whatever reason, I came across in my mind of the periodic table of elements, that we've all learned at school at some point through chemistry, whether it was early in your high school years or later in your high school years. And then we all remember it, although in our case, we didn't like much chemistry, but we still remember that table. It made sense. It was kind of organized. So we thought, why don't we change those elements for team chemistry? So the word chemistry came back. So we thought about rearranging that table so it makes sense for team sports context. So we came up with 30 elements that we think foster team chemistry in sports in general. And those 30 elements became our 30 chapters of our book.
So they're under 4 categories, these 30 elements: creation, communication, collaboration, and coordination, I believe. And are they able to be combined across the board? Like H2O is water in the normal periodic table?
Yeah. We thought about that at the beginning. It became a bit too complicated, but to answer your question differently, the book is designed so you can start reading it at any place in the book. If you want to start, if chapter 14, which is 5.1, catches your attention, if you start with chapter 14, you'll be okay. If you prefer to start with chapter 22, which is titled Together, you won't be lost if you start with chapter 22. So it's designed that way, so you can read what catches your attention first. And of course, you'll understand the link between those elements that you read through. But it's okay if you don't start from the beginning. That's how we designed it.
And if I can add something just to piggyback on what Andre was saying. So what Andre is saying is it's written in a modular way, which means you can take any elements in the book and create your own coaching molecules, if you want to say it that way. So for someone, for the current situation that you're living, it's chapter 5, 17, and 24 that will help you manage that situation better. Well, that's your molecule for the day or for the week. And so, and something else that's very important is Andre and I don't believe in recipes. There's a lot of these leadership books out there that say, the 7 habits of a great leader, or which there's a lot of great content in those books. But I think if you believe you have a formula, that's the first strike for me as a great leader. Great leaders don't have formulas. They adapt to whatever's going on. And so we kind of just threw 30 elements out there, and you just pick and choose whatever makes sense for you.
Right.
Yeah, and now in terms of adapting to what you have to work with and putting things together, I love the Lego example in the book. JF, why is it, a healthy approach to ask, like, a child who, plays with Legos, or like my nephew likes to build things with his toys, about the choices they made that got them toward the finished product, rather than just looking at the finished product?
Yeah, totally. So that chapter is about a parent and a child, and you can make a link between a coach and an athlete, or even like a leader in a corporate setting in their employee. So what's very typical when the child, let's say a four-year-old boy, builds a tower made out of Legos in his room, what's the first thing the child's going to do? He's going to run out of his room, go get mommy and daddy and say, come see, come see, come see. And typically, parents will all say the same thing. They will see the tower and they'll congratulate the child right away by like saying, wow, or like bravo, or that's unbelievable. But actually that could be negative for the child's development, because in the end, you're conditioning the child to become obsessed with the actual result. So getting the wows, getting the bravos. But when we talk about resiliency, when you talk about perseverance, when you talk about adapting to change, it's about understanding what led to the actual result. So we're not saying not to congratulate the child. All we're saying is make the child reflect on how we got to that result. So you could ask a question like, was that your original plan? Or did you plan to build something else? And you might think, yeah, but it's a 4-year-old child. They'll have something to say. They might say, well, I wanted to build a house, but then it kept going higher and higher and higher, so I decided to build a tower. Oh, okay. Have you been working on that for a while? And you might think, well, it's 4 years old. Yeah, but the child might say, I've been working on that since breakfast. So all of a sudden, the child understands these concepts of like time, changing plans. You might ask the child, like, did you have any problems along the way? Did your tower fall? Did it break? Oh yeah, it wasn't very solid. At some point I had to put some extra Legos. And then at the end, you can say the quick bravo or I'm proud of you. But it's to develop that thought process of all the things the child went through in order to get to that result. And when you do that, they're much more keen and prone in the future to develop creativity, to be more perseverant in moments where it's difficult, and to actually understand what it takes to be successby.
Yeah, I'm just flashing back on being a little bit older than 4 and having my Lego creations usually just destroyed by a little brother, but that's neither here nor there. Sorry, Sean. But Andre, I also wondered, with coaching now at any level, especially with younger athletes, how much greater do you think the expectations are to be respectful to everyone as an individual compared to when, say, any of us would have been, children playing sports?
Well, if you think about life skills, if you look at how sports is developing around the world right now, those life skills are becoming so important. So as the leader of the group, as the coach of the team, you have to show the way. Like I was talking to my colleagues in France. They're world champion in soccer. They won the last World Cup, and I asked them, how do you pick the athletes on the team? And they said one of the criteria to select athletes is when we watch them play, we watch how they react when one of their teammates makes a mistake. If the body language is wrong, if the body language is not to the level of which we think it should be, you won't play for Team France. You will not represent the team at the World Cup in soccer. So can you imagine all the work that is being done by the coach in order to show the way to their athletes, and not only at the highest possible level, which is the World Cup of soccer, but all the other layers of development that is happening before they get there. So life skills, becoming respectful, as you mentioned, but not only that, there's so many other life skills. When you look at leadership skills, you look at being able to communicate in front of a group, and many other ones that we mentioned in the book as well become so important. And at the end of the day, how you as a leader behave becomes how your athletes on the team will behave also. So if you keep screaming to the officials, or you're fighting with parents on the other team, or whatever it is, the athletes, the kids on your team will think it's how it should be done. So I think we make a big case in our book about how you are as an individual, as a coach, as a person first, in order to teach those fundamentals, life skills with the athletes on your team.
Andre, if we're looking at coaching specifically, what level of coach is this book best suited for?
I think all levels. Like we're a little bit maybe more towards coaches involved in a little bit more in competition. But there's so many things that will resonate to the moms and dads that are involved, like coaching soccer or baseball in the summer, coaching basketball, hockey in the winter. And the book is so practical also with ideas and strategies that could be put into place like tomorrow morning at your next practice, that I think any level of coaching will find what they need. Jeff, what do you think?
Well, I think Andre, you're right. Like, I mean, I do work mostly with older athletes, and most of my clients are elite. And I know, Andre, in your coaching career as well. But we were very mindful when we wrote the book that it wasn't geared only towards the elite, because we know that there's a lot of coaches out there that don't earn a salary doing this. You don't do it full time. Like it's volunteer work, right? So we had to keep it, understandable for these coaches as well. So like Andre said, they could use it immediately, and takes away some nuggets to help their intervention methods, the way they communicate. So I think it's geared towards everyone as well.
And speaking of those high performance athletes you work with, JF, I was struck when you were talking about, the Moguls King, Mikhail Kingsbury, and how his support team is 14 people. Although, us watching the Olympics on CBC, we just see him going down the Moguls course. How valuable is it for the individual sport athlete to see themselves as part of a team?
Totally. Well, I have a philosophy, Nate, that even if you're an individual athlete, you're always part of a team. And when people talk about team sports, it's the athletes that are many playing at the same time on a playing field. And that's why we say team sports. But every individual athlete has a huge team around them, especially at the elite level. And so for Mick, who had to deal with a lot of pressure going into the Olympics, it was crucial for him to remember that he was not alone. Because we typically, when we feel pressure, we typically close in. We typically feel that we're alone. There's no one else that feels the pressure like we are. And I force my clients, whenever they're stressed, they're nervous, or they feel the negative pressure, to remember that they have a support group around them. And it's very comforting to know that, and to actually see these people supporting us and feeling it as well. And Mick did a great job in preparation for the Pyeongchang Olympics. And we go into deep details in the story in one of our chapters. But to never forget that when you have a me philosophy, you can always change it to we. And there's a big difference between the me and the we in terms of how we manage a situation, especially around pressure.
And you also, JF, have dealt with Max Perot as well, correct?
Yes.
So my question is, at Beijing 2022, both had completely different outcomes, in the sense that Mick was favored to win, and he surprisingly didn't, and neither did Hiroshima. But Max had to overcome Hodgkin lymphoma, and then he went on to win gold. So how did you? I'm assuming you were there, right? So how did you deal with those two different cases, where one person surprised in a good way, and in a sense, Mick didn't probably perform as the outside perspectives or outside opinions thought he would? Yeah.
Well, first of all, they were back to back. One was one day and the other was the next day. So it was a lot of emotions in 48 hours. Listen, it's judge sports, right? And, some people say Mick choked, but if you're a moguls fan and you've been watching mogul skiing for a long time, there's a lot of people that said that he should have won with the quality of his skiing. But again, it's a judge sport and anything can happen. But in the end, he was proud of what he did. And I think that's the most important thing. Is did he regret that he didn't go any faster? A little bit. But I mean, there are so many good things that he accomplished as well. And it's so easy to look at what you didn't do and forget all the great things you did do. And we're still talking about a third Olympic medal in 3 Olympic Games. So I was very, very proud of him. And also just the way he handled himself, like the whole week before the actual competition, I was with him every day and he was a real pro. I mean, just straight down to business, did what he had to do, managed his energy perfectly during the week. And then Max is just, such an inspirational story. I mean, the guy almost died with cancer and was able to get over it with chemo and comes back 2 months after his chemo treatments and wins the X Games in Norway. And then, a few years later, wins 2 Olympic medals for Canada. It's I could talk about it for hours. He's someone that I truly, truly respect and a very, very special human being.
In terms of coaching them, again, they're individuals. But did you employ some of your same tactics in practice with them, or did you have to completely rewrite that because of the situation, especially with Max having cancer?
Right. No, it's literally the same thing. I mean, the context can change, but the actual work remains the same. I remember when Max was diagnosed with cancer, the first thing he told me was, Jeff, I don't want you to coach me differently because I have cancer. We've been working together for already 5 years and you helped me win Olympic medals and win some X Games. I need the same type of coaching now to win cancer, to beat cancer. And so essentially the same mental skills, the same type of approach, but just a different context.
So I'm going to pose this question to the both of you. And I think JF had mentioned it a little bit earlier about all the books out there of different coaches. But let's take a closer look at social media. And there's plenty of experts in life coaching online. Usually they're faceless tiles, but tell you the 10 things you need to do or don't do to succeed. Of course, I would highly doubt this is coming from academics such as yourself. So how do you both, with academic backgrounds, see what's going on and see your role in relation to this plethora of life coaching that's going on Instagram in terms of tiles and even, maybe people as well that post videos that don't always seem to have anything other than hustle?
Well, that's a good question. There's obviously with the social media, there's so many people out there trying to figure out all the problems in the world in sports and other domains as well. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for support, if you're looking to become better at what you do, in our case, it's coaching. It starts with you. Like for me, I'm curious. Like you have no idea how curious I am. And I think at the end of the day, I'm able to sort out what's good and what's not. And also with me over the years, people asking me, how did you learn coaching? And my answer is always the same. My best teachers were the athletes. Because if you get to know well your athletes, if you ask the good questions, they're going to teach you so many things where you won't need as much social media as people consume nowadays. So probably those are my 2 initial thoughts about your question: is being a lifelong learner, be curious, ask lots of questions, and get to know your athletes well. Because at the end of the day, they're gonna make you better.
Is there a danger, Jean François or Andre, is there a danger in the average person not understanding the difference between experts such as yourself and what they're seeing online, like these basic concepts of coaching you through to success?
Well, is there a danger? I think there's always a danger. There's just with the internet in general. You can anyone can post anything. So is to answer your question, is there a danger? Yes, there's a danger. But I think what Andre said is very important. Is to rely on what actually makes sense, what makes you reflect, to sort out what's good and what's not. And I think it's actually great to have access to a lot of people. I remember when I first started in the field, was coming out of school, you had to go to a conference to learn from experts and, to get some information from other people. Now you can do it from your own office and just go online and watch these TED Talks and, learn from these podcasts like we're doing right now. And so, I took away some stuff from people that I don't even know and maybe don't respect that much, but maybe it's just one thing they said or the way they said it that I just make it my own. So in the end, it's about understanding what you need and applying it according to if it makes sense or not, based on your values, based on your leadership philosophy. So yeah, it's just to be smart.
And for each of you, I sort of want to circle back because of the to your backgrounds in coaching, and maybe Andre, you can be up first with this one because you coached with the national women's baseball team for so many years, and we've had women sportswomen on who are national team athletes in other sports such as Sammy Jo Small a couple of years ago. I just wondered, in terms of specific to that experience, and I mean we're talking dozens of players over 15 years, but specific to that experience, what were the greatest things you learned from athletes who were helping build the profile for women in a sport that had been traditionally male?
Well, I would think, like, for me, when I joined the team, that was back in 2003, I didn't know. Like, I was not even sure I wanted to coach women's in baseball. I was not sure I was a believer in it at the time. And they told me, well, why don't you try it? If you don't like it, we'll give it to someone else. And it lasted 15 years. So that tells you that I really, really enjoyed those 15 years coaching the Canadian team. And I would never trade that experience with anything else that I've done in my career as a coach. But at the end of the day, I think the main thing is to be vulnerable. Like, it goes back to my answer to your previous question. Like, I can't count how many times, and I keep telling that same story, but it tells a lot about the experience, is that I cannot count the number of times I ran a drill because I thought it would solve the problem. And at the end, after a couple of minutes, one athlete would say, "Hey, coach, like, that drill, it's not working. Like, it's BS. It's just not working." I said, okay, like, I could have, my first reaction could have been, well, it's my drill. Let's continue to do it, even if it's not good. Or that's the route I decided to take, is that, okay, how can we make it work? Because the intention of the drill is to fix this problem. How can we make it work? And together as a group, we would fix it. And one athlete would say, like, okay, if we change this or that, maybe that could work. I said, okay, let's try it. And then together we would find an outstanding drill to address a specific thing that we had to fix on that specific thing. And to me, it's so important not to value or not to see your position as head coach of a team or just a coach on the team as having all the answers. I think you're there to support the athlete. It's an athlete-centered position that you're in, and it's coach-driven, but you're working together as a group. And to me, that has been the key, probably the key to the success that we've had.
And I love too an example, because we were talking about the 4 C's. I think one of them at the creation point, an example you used was one day one of your best players on your team forgot an article of the team uniform. And you're just like, well, you don't play today. Well, through lessons like that and showing how those things can evolve over time. What are you hoping to teach about it? How a group will have different standards as they progress and grow together?
You know what's funny with this story, and I think JF was there. It was the first year with the team. We're in Japan, and then, like you mentioned, one of the athletes forgot her jersey for warming up, and I made the decision, because we just started a program, to remove that athlete from the starting lineup. She was furious. She's a police officer in Toronto. I thought she wanted to kill me. But at the end of the day, fast forward 15 years later, everyone on the team knows Melanie. That's the name of the athletes. Nobody on the team has ever met her, but they know that story. And I don't even have to tell them to not forgetting your equipment because it's important, because they've been told by others over time that it is important for us as a team to get our things together and not forgetting our stuff. So that tells you a lot about one decision that was made that has an impact still 15 years after. I could have said, it's okay, well, make sure you don't forget it next time, but it would not have had the same impact as it had. Would the same intervention be the same 10 years after in a totally different context? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. I don't know. But in this particular moment, I felt that was the right thing to do.
In chapter 4, under staff, Andre, you write about the need to be challenged as a coach. And in this question, it doesn't necessarily apply directly to coaching, but just in general in managing people, whether it's corporate or on the field or on the ice. How do you bring people onto your staff that will challenge you, but that won't be doing it in a way they're surreptitiously trying to take your job? Because I think that's certainly the case for people that want to move ahead. There certainly is merit in bringing in people that kind of are in your network, because they're not necessarily going to try and usurp you. So how do you bring in these people that challenge you but aren't doing it for the wrong reasons per se?
Yeah, a very good question. And that person that challenges you is so important. You guys remember Dr. House on TV?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Do you think he was fun to work with? Not at all. Like, he was not fun, right? But
right.
Was he there for the right reason? Totally. You want to cure every problem the patients were having. And that's the type of people in any organization, that Dr. House, who's not always fun, but he's there for the right reason, that makes a huge impact on the team. And the day that I realized that, it was probably too late. I wish I would have known years earlier. It made a difference for me, because that person challenged me, but I knew that person was there for the right reason. So finding that giver type of person is so important. And if they challenge you to a point where at some point they feel they should get your position, so be it. I think the team might be better at some point if someone is getting to a point where they should take over the leader of the group. And there's nothing bad with that. It's good succession planning, actually. So I would always go have someone on my team that will challenge me all the time, and that made a huge difference for me as a coach.
What I would add to that, guys, is there's a way to do it as well. Like if that assistant coach, whoever that person is, does it in a way to make you look silly in front of others or to call you out in front of a group, like that's not the way it should be done. These are conversations you have maybe one-on-one or maybe just within your own staff in a very respectful way. And I think those are ground rules you need to put together before you get into that situation. So I would just add that, because sometimes there would be some people that would do it on purpose to make you look silly or stupid,
right?
And that's not what we're talking about,
right? So speaking of cohesion and team chemistry, how did you both get ECW to buy into this book? And can you take us into the room when you sold them on publishing it? I know it may have been your agent or agents, but give us, because this podcast is about sports books specifically. It's always interesting to know the business behind things. So how did you sell this book to ECW?
Well, Neil and Nate, before I answer that question, I would like to say thank you for reading the book, because sometimes we do interviews with people and they don't really read the book. And clearly with the questions you're asking, you went through the actual book. So thank you for that.
Oh, hey, you know what? That's the rule of this podcast. I think Nate will agree. We created this podcast because we saw so many interviews regarding books where the host had never read it.
Yeah, and that's not a knock on any host. They're getting some Cliff's notes on an index card about what it's about. I mean, that's just the nature of media work, right? But we thought, if we read the whole book, that can be part of the hook.
No, but it's fun as authors to get some deeper questions like you're asking. So I just wanted to call that out. So I wrote a book called Train Your Brain Like an Olympian a few years ago, and it was actually published with ECW Press. So we had that connection already, and I'm going to call her out directly. Jennifer Smith was my contact person for that book, and she has been the lead for Andre and I's book as well. And they've been fantastic. I have nothing but great things to say about them, and we're really happy that we're dealing with them.
Nice.
Awesome. Go ahead, Nate.
And Andre, obviously we hope people buy the book and it has great success. But one thing we hope you would explain for our readers, what is a sociogram and how does it help with building a team?
That's a good question. Thanks for asking that one. So a sociogram is a tool that I've used, that other coaches have probably used in the past, to identify links between members of a group, or in our case, teammates on a team. So basically, it tells you like who is the potential leader, who is the influencer of that leader, who could be isolated also, who are the little cliques on your teams also, like the mini units like within the big group that could eventually derail the whole group as well. So in the book, you will discover a way that I've used to develop a sociogram, but by asking a question to the team. So basically, we would fly to Taiwan or Japan, and I know once I arrive at destination, I need to do I need to put two together in a room during the duration of the World Cup. So I would ask them a question. 1 to 3, give me your preference on the teammates you would like to share your room with. So 1 to 3 is my number one favorite, 2 and 3, and then I look at the results and everything, and then I start to make connections, like who's picking who and who's not picking who, and I start to do some diagrams that you're going to discover in the book. And I ask another question is, who would you not want to share your room with? So that gives you more information about the connection that happens within your team. And with that information, there's all kinds of things you could do. If you feel there's one individual on your team that is isolated, then you need to find out the reason why it's the case. You might want to readjust your strategies to make sure that person is no longer isolated. If you look at someone that everyone is pointing to, so that could be your leader, but that person that is picked by that person is for me a key individual. So for an example, if JF is the key person on the team, he's a leader, everyone wants to room with JF, but JF is picking Paul, then I'm going to use Paul as a vehicle to distribute a message to the group, because I know Paul will tell JF and I know JF will tell the rest of the group. So that's what a sociogram is all about. So you need to pick your questions. So basically the athletes don't know what you're doing, like other than trying to figure out the rooming list, but it reveals all kinds of great information that's going to give you a little bit more leverage throughout the course of your season.
And just briefly, what's the difference between micro teams that can be valuable to have and having cliques that, as you say, could derail the collective spirit?
So, yeah, sometimes you need those little units. I'll give you an example. Sometimes you need a leadership team on your team. So I know many professional teams do have a leadership team. Instead of having captains and 2 assistants, they will have more people in that group that will make decisions on the group. I have before like a social group where they would be responsible for all the social activities. I would have what I call the lateral knowledge group. They will seek out all kinds of great information that other teams are doing in order to see if those good ideas could be good for our team as well. So sometimes in a big group, you need to subdivide your group into smaller units for the benefit of the group, where cliques are not functioning for the benefit of the group. They're functioning against the big group. So that's the big difference between the two.
Nice.
Just a few. Sorry, Nate, did I cut you off there?
No, not at all, Neil.
just a few more questions, and I just remembered one now that I wanted to ask, so I'm going to ask that in a second. But essentially, the coaching that you guys do is at a high level in the sense that it's high performance athletes, high level athletes, and also you do a lot of work with corporate clients. Where are we in this type of life skill, this type of coaching, this mental aspect of coaching being brought to the common person? Are we getting there? Is that something for example, mental health wasn't always a priority 20, 30 years ago. Now we see it, filtering into regular society more and more. Is your type of coaching going to reach the average person? Do you see a trend in that regard?
Well, I think so. I saw it with my first book when I talked about the mental skills trainings that I do in the lead sport and how we can use it in the workplace and just normal day life. And Andre and I already received some feedback on our new book now on the same thing. Like Andre mentioned it a while ago, like some of this stuff is great for parents. It's great for in between friends and colleagues. All their chapters on communication. Yeah, it's written for coach-athlete relationships, but a lot of these communication skills that we're explaining in our book, like the 5-1 chapter, which is ask 5 questions before you give one piece of advice. And oftentimes we give advice so quickly, especially in our society now, like everything has to be fast. But actually take time to ask questions before you give a piece of advice, and that piece of advice will be different. Well, that's just as important with relationship with your friends or your spouse, or a teacher and a student at school than it is in the world of sport. And so, yes, I would say that this stuff I think can translate easily. And it's not it wasn't the main purpose to write a book for general society. It was written for sport, obviously, but there's a transfer for sure.
And so who can you tell me right now, JF and Andre, who are some of the maybe the companies and clients you are working with or continue to work with?
Go ahead, Andre.
You want to go first, Jeff? Well, for me, guys, many Olympic committees, especially now in Scandinavia. So mainly recently look at Iceland, Denmark, looking also at going in the fall to Finland as well, where Norway will be there as well, and all other countries from Scandinavia. I've done work also with the Middle East, with some of the Olympic committees as well there. Pan Am has been also something that I've done, also including the United States Olympic Committee that was leading the event in Miami just before the pandemic. I've done Bermuda as well. So many Olympic committees that are looking at a better way of doing of structuring their sports. And here in Quebec, like banks, energy corporation, pharma, that have been asking for help as well in order to sometimes motivate, sometimes structure them, sometimes giving them ideas. So that has been my side.
Jean François.
Well, a little bit of everything that Andre just explained. I do a lot more work in the corporate sector. So, pharma companies to construction companies to, I do a lot of work for the Canadian government. And in the end, it's all these organizations that are just looking to become better and have an edge over their competitors. Because, when you're talking about the financial field or pharmaceutical, it's extremely competitive. There's a lot of money involved. And in the end, if you can get their people to work together a little better, get them a little bit, stronger mentally, well, they become better performers. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if you're an Olympic athlete or if you're an employee somewhere, your brain is the motor to performance. And regardless if we're talking about sports teams or teams in the corporate sector, the more you can get them to collaborate and communicate properly, to have a great team culture, well, we all know that they're going to perform better as well. So.
Both of you have experience with Cirque du Soleil. Andre, you're currently with Cirque du Soleil, and Jean François, you ran away from school to join the circus, as you wrote in the book. So what I was wondering is, we know we can learn from you guys. We know we can learn from Max Perot and Mikhail Kingsbury, but what can we learn from a clown?
Well, that's a good one for JF. He's worked with them.
We can learn a lot from clowns. Listen, I could talk about my work with clowns for hours, but I'm going to keep it short. Clowns are some of the best communicators I have ever witnessed in my life. Like, if you think about what they do for a living, they entertain thousands of people that they don't know. And they do it like several hundreds of times a year. And what's unique about a clown compared to an acrobat, for instance, in a circus show, is the acrobat, they'll do their acrobatic act and there's not much interaction with the crowd. Whereas for clowns, oftentimes they'll go get people in the crowd, bring them on stage and do some funny stuff with them. And so it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of poise and self-belief in your abilities to convince someone, to believe in your shenanigans. And so great communicators, great connectors, they're great listeners, and they're just great performers. And the reason they're great performers is because they're so savvy and strategic about how they go about a situation. And it's about finding solutions in every situation where they need to adapt. And so anyways, all that to say that I could talk about clowns for a long time, but they're more than just scary people that are funny sometimes as well. They're very interesting people.
Well, the best question for last. Thanks to both of you for joining us today. I know, JF, you probably have to run off, so we won't keep you any longer. But I wanted to thank you both, and Nate as well, for doing this today. And obviously, good luck with the book going forward.
Well, thanks, guys. Much appreciated. Like JF mentioned, great questions, and I appreciate it. I enjoyed the last hour spent with you guys.
Nice. Thank you so much.